exactly half a century ago, meaning exactly 50 years today, November 7th, 1975, I came kicking and screaming into this world as a new member of the human race. But I had decided, because I was a creative young lad, to introduce myself to this world in the most original way possible. Most babies, under normal circumstances, decide to come out head first. That's the way they should be born. However, due to certain circumstances, like in the case of my mother, she decided to take a plane trip very late in pregnancy, which is not advised, because that can cause the baby to start flipping around in utero due to the change of gravity. Some babies can flip around and try to come out foot first, and that's called breech, being breech. However, that wasn't good enough for me. I wanted to introduce myself to this world ass first, and that's exactly what I did. I did a full, perfect forward fold, forehead touching my knees, and I thought they're going to be so impressed when they see me coming out of the gates. But of course, the nurses couldn't approve that, because that's not a safe way to be born. So they said, nope, Adam can't be born like this. But the problem was, the doctor was on vacation. He decided to go golfing for 3 days, so there were no doctors to deliver me. So what did the nurses do? Well, they held back my birth for 72 hours. Yes, my mother was in labor for 72 hours. Yes, it almost killed her, and it almost killed me. Thankfully, it didn't. It came very, very close. But after 3 days of being in labor, the doctor came rushing back, and they did an emergency C-section, and out I came. And they were actually concerned that if I didn't straighten out naturally, then there was a good chance that they would have to break my hips to straighten me out, which means I would have had to be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. Shit happens, but life does happen sometimes. But thankfully, when I came out, I sprung open like an ironing board, and they put me down on my mother's chest. My mother barely alive at this point. There was not much left of her. And I remember her telling me the story about the minute they did that, I did a full push-up. I was probably a couple of minutes old at this point. I did a full push-up and looked at her right in the face with this real serious look on my face like, the fuck you looking at? And my mother went, oh my God. And she yelled, this crazy creature giving me a dirty look, one minute old. But that was it. That was my dramatic entrance into this world. Now, somewhere between November 7th, 1975 and November 7th, 2025, I learned how to draw, apparently. And turning 50 today, yes, happy birthday me, thank you very much, you're so thoughtful. Turning 50 today, it gave me a moment to look back at the last 50 years of my artistic journey. And not only reflect on my own experiences, but reflect on the experiences of all of my students and all of you who've been sharing your stories with me ever since I started teaching in college, and then starting my own private mentorship, and having the opportunity to listen to the stories and be in the skin of artists of every age, from 15 years old all the way to 75. It's quite a privilege that I've had the opportunity to be able to have these conversations with all of these different artists at different phases in their career, at different skill levels, with different ambitions. And I thought it would be cool to share with you what I've learned, not only from my own life experiences, but from everybody else's. And hopefully at the end of it, what it'll offer you is an opportunity to reflect on where you are in your journey right now, and realize that no matter what it is you're experiencing, good or bad, it's all part of the journey. However, before I continue, on November 22nd, 2025, I am hosting my second official Lucid Pixel workshop on cinematic lighting. It's called Cinematic Mastery, Bringing Mood and Depth to Art. If you want any information and details on how to sign up, you can find my contact information in the description below. Truthfully speaking, there are certain things you can control. You can control your education, you can control the type of career that you pursue. Within reason, you don't have full control over that because the world's always changing. But everything else is pretty much you learn on the job. Just like having a child, if you've had a child of your own, or if you've raised any kids, adopted children, if you've raised pets, then you'll know full well that every single human being on this planet is unique. All of those how to raise children guides are in most part kind of garbage because from one kid to the next, every child, every life, every artistic journey, every career you have, you learn on the job. You might be the one who chooses which boats to climb into, but you don't control the wind, I'm afraid. I'm afraid that's Mother Nature's job. So if I go back to the early stages of my life, let's say 10, 12 years old, around my son Lucas's age, who's just gotten into drawing a lot, he posts on Instagram all the time, he's doing extremely well. I didn't have career aspirations. I don't think there's any 12-year-old who says, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And if they do say that, they probably don't mean it, because they don't know what that entails. But looking back at that age, I realized that the efforts that I was making, the drawings that I did, the drawings that I was a fan of, the fan art that I used to do most of the time, which was mostly Disney stuff back in the day, I realized how instrumental that was in later on in life when I did want to pursue this professionally. Because number one, I was getting a lot of practice in, but number two, I was also creating an identity for myself. Something that I've spoken about on my channel a lot is art is not what you do, it's who you are. Particularly if you want to have a career, a long time career in it. You don't do drawings, you are an artist. And this is something that I identified as at a very young age. Probably due in part to the fact that I was raised by an artist mother. I just had art in the family, so it was a low-hanging fruit for me. But I was good at it, and I did love it. It wasn't something that I did because I felt obliged to. I did it because I just felt a lot of joy when I drew. It was something that just came out of me very naturally. And thinking about that and looking at a lot of the students that I have that are younger, I think the youngest artist I've ever taught is around 14, 15 years old. I could tell very clearly at that age by what they drew and how often they drew and the effort and the care that they put into it and maybe a little bit of the worry at that point and where they were going to go with it. I did not see an artist who was any less serious about their aspirations, their goals, than a 35-year-old professional with years of education behind their back. I saw somebody who had the right mindset to work professionally. And I'd add to that, there's this certain transitional period in an artist's mind when you go from being somebody who loves to draw, somebody who's the school artist, to being somebody who makes that emotional decision to pursue it professionally and actually make a career out of it. There's this shift of mindset. And prior to that shift of mindset into being a professional, pursuing an education and taking this very seriously, there's this creative freedom, there's this creative courage that I see in my son, I see in my students, that I think should be highlighted throughout this entire Painter's Hollow today. Because in the end, the reason we're here is because this is something that we really, really love. And when you're that young, you're old enough at that age, 10, 12, 14, 16 years old. You're good enough at that age to be able to produce some really impressive stuff. But you might not be old enough to feel the burden of obligation. You're just doing it because you love it. So everything that comes out of you is usually pure nerd fuel. You're just geeking out and you're just doing what's cool. And when I see my son Lucas drawing stuff, he just draws what's cool. He doesn't care about how good his drawings look. He cares about doing something that means something to him. And usually the type of artistic expression that artists at that age have is a very pure and unfiltered version of themselves. They're not doing what they think is popular. They're doing what they just think is cool. Now, fast forward a little bit. You start to approach the end of high school. You're 16, 17, 18. Now mentally things are starting to get a little bit more serious. You're starting to think, okay, I might be going to college soon. And I just actually started with a young artist, 16 years old, who was considering traveling. She's considering traveling to abroad to either France or to Canada or to the US to study abroad to pursue an education in animation. And something very profound happens between the ages of 12 and 16. At 12 years old, you're still nerding out and doing fan art stuff. You're still doing fan art stuff at 16, but at this point you're thinking, okay, now there's an expectation for me to go somewhere with this stuff. And that's where I'm starting to see the first indications of a professional. And this is very often in an artist's artistic path, in an artistic journey, that can be a make or break moment in that journey. What I mean by that is, as young artists who just draw what's cool, we're under no obligation to draw. We're just doing it out of pure passion. You're also not committing yourself to the labor of practice necessarily. Going through those fundamentals, learning how to master perspective and form and line art and value and color, etc., 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 all the stuff you learn in schools. So you're just doing what's fun. You're doing what's easy. You're learning a lot though, aren't you? You're getting good. But you're not doing what anybody else told you to do. You're doing only what you choose to do because it's your own hobby. So nobody's hanging over your shoulder telling you what to draw. And when that happens, when you realize, hey, if you want to get good at drawing, you're going to need to do some of the stuff, and some of it might be boring, that very often artists look at that and go, I don't like it anymore. I'm not enjoying this anymore at all. And it's funny because when I had a conversation with my young student today, she told me she wanted to get a degree she wanted to pursue an education in animation. She wanted to get a career in animation. So I said, okay, if that's the case, we started going through a lot of those animation fundamentals. I started to explain to her what it actually means to animate. Yes, you might like animation art. You might like the drawings and the style of characters, like animation, like anime, like North American animation, but you also have to be extremely good at three-dimensional forms and proportions and foreshortening. You have to start learning the physics of movement, like tempo and follow-through and overlapping action and tempo, and how to speed up and slow down, and the stretch and squash principles and all of these different technical principles. Are you going to be shooting on ones or twos? Are you going to be doing 12 frames a second or 24 frames a second of animation? That means that for every second of animation is 24 drawings that need to be refined and polished and cleaned up and maybe even colored to create this nice fluid movement that feels natural. That requires a lot of redos, a lot of work and a lot of labor. And then multiply that work 60 times per minute. And then maybe you want to do a 5, 10, 15-minute animation, and you start to realize the incredible amount of labor. And I'm really presenting her, the 16-year-old artist, with the weight of labor, of practice, of refinement. And I said, how does that feel when I talk about all that stuff? And she said, maybe it's weird, but it kind of excites me. I like that. There's something exciting about that. She said, because you walk out of the other end of that with life that you've created. I mean, the magic of animation, of animating something, is that you take something out of your mind and you give it a voice and eyes and a face, an identity, a body, movement, clothes, dynamics, gesture, body language, personality. You can actually see your drawings come to life. She said, there's something exciting about that. And I went, you just qualified as a professional. That's a professional. If a professional can look at the labor and find the love in the labor, then that's a professional. Because there's a lot of hard work. It's labor intensive. This is one of the reasons why a lot of animators start off, like me, for instance, saying, I want to get into animation. I want to study animation. I want to get really good at animation. But then when they start to animate, they realize it's not the animation that they love. It's the animation art. They love drawing cartoons, characters. So you might not want to be an animator. And if you are, maybe if the animation just burns you out and that kind of work just doesn't do it for you, maybe instead you want to do something like a webcomic, like something like Ice Cream Sandwich or Jaden Animations, where they don't animate every single key and breakdown and in between. Instead, they just do the key poses. And they animate these key poses to dialogue, and they do kind of a storytelling type of idea. And that can be a hell of a lot of fun. I mean, look at how popular Jaden Animations and Ice Cream Sandwich are. They're making a killing from their channels. So that's very viable as well. Are you somebody who wants to do fully rendered out characters like Glenn Keane and animating things like Tarzan with the muscles and the anatomy and like studying the animated movement of skateboarders so that you can get the swinging through the vines type of vibe? Or do you just want to do cute, simplistic stick figures, but with an impeccable sense of comedic timing, like Ice Cream Sandwich? One of the funniest, when Ice Cream Sandwich posts something, me and Lucas, we drop everything and we go and we watch it. We watch him on repeat all the time. His work is fantastic. And Lucas literally binges on Jaden Animation all the time. All the time. That to me is the mark of a professional. So if you're at that phase in your life right now, I'd say probably between the ages of 16 and 25. Once you start making that transition from the end of high school into college, if that's the direction you want to go, pay attention to how you feel about the repetitive, the grunt work that might come with that, quote, profession that you're after. If it just doesn't seem viable to you, if it just seems like there's no way in hell I'd enjoy doing this for 5 years, let alone having a 30, 40-year career with this, that doesn't mean drop it. It means, hey, maybe there's a way to adapt that, like Ice Cream Sandwich did, like Jaden did. That maybe I don't like doing that 24 frames a second, but I still love to pose. I still love to gesture. I still love doing voice acting. I still love facial expressions. I still love timing. I still love design. Well, then that's an alternative for you. And an alternative that's very approachable, I might add. All right, let's push the needle forward a little bit to your 20s to your 30s. So let's say 20 to your late 20s to your early 30s. I would argue that that's one of the shittiest decades for any artistic career. You are old enough to be good. You're old enough to now having a deep sense of professional obligation. Now you're an adult. You're over 18. You need to go to college. You need to get that education. You need to get that job. You need to make a living for yourself. But realistically speaking, unless you're the type of person who A, has very strict parents who push your academics a lot and force you to do nothing but study every day and put a lot of weight on that, or B, you just have a very linear focus and there's jack shit in life else from drawing and getting good at art that you want to do. The 20s are usually marked with a lot of guilt. For a lot of artists. Not all of them, but a lot of artists. Because you're a junior, because you just fucking finished high school, for God's sakes, and now you gotta push yourself into yet another stretch of schooling. Thankfully, college is more tailored to your personal tastes, but there's all these fucking prerequisite courses you got to take all the time. And you do it. Maybe you succeed. Maybe you drop out because that course really wasn't doing it for you. So maybe at that point, you either have a diploma, but you're not getting work from it because you're a junior and nobody cares about you, or you didn't finish that course, so now you feel like a dropout and a loser. And you're sitting there going, is there any future for me as an artist at all? I mean, I couldn't even succeed like my peers did. So very often, because it's hard to find work, because honest to goodness, for any person in their 20s right now, the economy, the housing and rent is ludicrously unachievable for most people, unless you live very, very modestly. And you've got a couple, you might be in a couple, you might have a sweetheart in your life, maybe you're dating, but maybe you're trying to start to have a life together. Maybe, you're around mid-20s. Maybe you want to have kids in the next 5 to 10 years or something like that. There's so much weight on the shoulders of somebody in their 20s with very little assistance, very little experience you can lean on. The way it usually happens with most artists at that age is you're fighting to find work. You're trying to figure out, should I relocate? Should I work online? What do I want to do? I'm not even exactly sure what kind of career to have. Is my portfolio okay? Do I have a focused portfolio? Do I even know what kind of career I want to pursue? All I know is that I like to draw. So there's a lot of questions and very, very few answers. I would argue that for any of my students, I'd say the bulk of my students that I teach are usually between the ages of 20 and 35. That's the majority of my students that I teach. And most of them, the large majority of them, save maybe 10%, know exactly where they're going. They've already had professional opportunities and they just need some help polishing up certain skills. Apart from that, most of the conversations I have with artists at that age is, what the hell do I do? How do I do it? What does my portfolio look like? Where do I apply? Is there hope? Please give me some realistic feedback on whether or not my portfolio is garbage or not. That kind of thing. And from a teacher's perspective, I find it probably one of the most rewarding things about working with artists of that age is that I can offer them that clarity. I can offer artists at that phase in their life a good sense of footing on where to apply their energy so that they can get to that place they want to get as quickly as possible. Why? Because I didn't have that. I didn't know. To me, it was a free-for-all. To me, it was work your ass off, apply everywhere, good luck. And it really burned me out. It really burned me out. Once you start, if you can make it through that awkward phase of your career, or at least the early career, kind of just getting some kind of momentum, getting that first job, starting to put some things on your CV, showing some kind of experience, getting something of a sense of direction with your career, with your art. Sometimes people get it at 25. For some people, it doesn't come till 35. That's totally normal, by the way. Very common and very normal. I know because I speak with thousands of students. This is very, very common. So don't feel like you're a loser if you're 35 and you still haven't kicked off a fruitful career yet. It comes to different people at different phases. But if you can get yourself over that hump, things start to get better for you. They generally tend to get better for you because you've got that hook. And with that hook comes progressive momentum. However, there's still an awkwardness. Once you have crossed that line, once you have gotten that job and you've had a taste of what that salary's like, and you go, hey, shit, I'm paying my own bills. Hey, I can buy myself a new pen display. Hey, I can buy myself some new equipment. Hey, I can take my sweetheart out on a date. Hey, maybe I could start a family at this age. You're starting to see that. I'd say that one of the hardest things that can happen at that phase in your career is that you might have to take a step back. That's hard. Once you've had that taste of freedom and independence, and then maybe you lose your job because, hey, life is unstable, man. So maybe you get laid off from your job. Maybe you get sacked because you weren't good enough. Maybe some shit happens. This happens. Having to move back with your parents, ugh, God, that hurts. Oof. And that's something that's something that's more and more common as every generation passes. I find that today's generation are a lot more likely to have a little bit more dependence on a support people like family or friends or stuff like that. They might need more support even later on into life because of the state of the economy. If I look back at the 1920s and 30s, it's freaking, here's a guy working at the bank and he's got, he's already saving up for his retirement. This fucker's 26 years old. How the hell did he land that kind of job? And then his father's been working in the same company for 30 years. He lived and retired from the same. What? That shit doesn't happen nowadays. And if I think about the way the world was back in the years I can remember, pre-professional, which would have been the 1980s, the 1990s, I still could sense that, by the time I'm reaching 25, 30 years old, I'm starting to get a lot more stability and independence at that point, give or take. But that was a prospect. Nowadays, I'm starting to see people in their 30s, mid-30s, even into their 40s that might need to rely a little bit more on their family just because the cost of living is just shit. And that's the reality of it. If that happens, if you do take a step back, yes, I know, that can be a real heavy kick to the groin. That hurts the ego bad. Plus, moving in with mom and dad in your 30s, in your 40s, is like, oh, son of a bitch, that feels like shit. You really feel like you're regressing. Understand. That's fucking life sometimes. It does suck. Even my daughter, who's 25 years old right now, she lives with her boyfriend. She's independent. She's supporting herself. They're both working. They're not making a shit ton of money, but they're happy. They've got a beautiful, beautiful cat, and they love each other to pieces. So they're cool. They got what they need. Emily and her boyfriend are totally, totally cool. They're doing great, and they're only going to keep doing better as things progress. But hey, man, something bad might happen. If you're at that phase in your life, it's not the end of the world. From a parent's perspective, if you have a younger child, a younger adult, a young professional, 20s, 30s, whatever, that finds some hard times, you break up with your partner, you lose your job, you financially can't support yourself, you barely have any money, and you give all of that money to buy premium cat food for your sweetheart, but you don't have enough money, but you have to eat macaroni and cheese every day. From a parent's perspective, supporting your kid and being able to be there whenever any of my kids need something from me, if I can help them, I jump at the opportunity. Because, for multiple reasons. Number one, I've been broke too. I've been in that position. I know how humiliating it can feel sometimes to have to ask for help when you're supposed to be quote unquote independent. But for me as a father, for me as a parent, being able to say, here's some money, here, I'll help you out with that. That's not a burden. That makes me feel wonderful to be able to say, here, I have the money to be able to help you out. If I have. Sometimes I'm broke too, right? So if I'm broke, maybe I'll give you less than normal. But if I can help out my kids, then I will. And I will do so with a lot of joy in my heart. I don't look at that and go, oh, fuck this freeloader, Jesus. No, there's a big difference between somebody who just doesn't make an effort, somebody who doesn't give a shit, and somebody who takes advantage of their parents. No, I'm not an idiot. If you're going to be like that, then screw you. You're not going to learn. I'm not going to help you grow as a young adult, as a responsible adult, as a young professional. If I just keep handing you paychecks all the time and you sit down and play video games and smoke up every day, of course not. That's stupidity. That's me teaching you to be irresponsible. I'm not allowing you to feel the sting of reality. But for somebody who's got kids who are trying their best, you see them working hard every day, trying to make a living for themselves, like I see with my kids. When they need help, it is an absolute honor to help them. Now, my kids, like Emily, might feel like shit. And she's like, oh, I hate this. I hate having to ask. I feel terrible for having to ask and everything like that. But to me, it's like, yeah, if you could see it through my eyes, you wouldn't be feeling that way. You would see somebody who you have a deep amount of respect for, somebody who you feel honored to have the means to be able to help them out. It brings me joy. It doesn't feel like a burden to me. So if you find yourself in that position and you feel extremely guilty because even though you're working hard, you feel like you're taking a bit of a step back, we all have to take a step back. That's all part of life. And taking a step back is one of the many times in your life where you're going to have to learn how to face your own ego. Ego is something that follows us through our entire careers. Ego is something I might have to face. Hey, I've got a YouTube channel. Hey, I've got a nice studio with good equipment and I'm recording these YouTube videos, and I've got a school, and I've got people coming to me asking me for advice all the time, and I host workshops all the time and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I could screw something up. All of a sudden, my services may no longer be viable in the modern world that we live in. And all of a sudden, nobody gives a shit about art lessons anymore. Nobody gives a shit about art advice anymore. They've moved on to bigger, better things. I'm going to have to, after well over almost a decade and a half of stability with my career, might find myself completely unemployed. Completely, and have no income coming in. And go through that panic of saying, holy shit, I need to pay my bills and I don't know how to do that. I might have to face that. It might very well happen. And when it does, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make a YouTube video about it, and I'm going to talk about this new chapter in my life that is facing me with new challenges. If my art career has taught me anything, now, speaking to the 40 to 50 year olds, or the 30 to 50 year olds, my art career taught me anything, I think one of the best things my art career ever taught me was that it never ever let me get complacent. It always forced me to be forward thinking, to be aware and sensitive to the fact that nothing lasts forever. That anytime I've had success and felt stability and comfort, it didn't mean it was time for me to stop working, stop trying, stop focusing, stop improving, stop evolving. Because the moment you do that, it gets taken away. The moment you do that, you do something careless, and life pulls the carpet out from under your feet, and you fall flat on your face. And to me, I think having that unpredictable career taught me to be self-aware. It taught me to say, hey, enjoy it while it lasts, but it might not last. And when it does, my mind and body need to be ready to be able to immediately adapt to new circumstances. What if AI does take over? What if it does consume our jobs? And despite the fact that we have millennia of human-created art history, effective now, we're pulling the plug on that. It's just not viable to hire humans to create art anymore because it's not a needed skill. The same way we don't need people to wash dishes and do the laundry anymore because we have laundry machines that can do that now. It's just the natural evolution of life. And yeah, okay, Adam, you're a 50, 67-year-old guy, and unfortunately, your skill to teach is just not necessary anymore. Let's say that happens. I don't see that happening because, well, I understand. I see art as being a human thing, and humanity is what makes it valuable in the first place. So it doesn't make sense for AI to take over. But hypothetically speaking, if it did, even if I was in my 60s, 70s, or 80s, I know from my past experiences, my past struggles, that my mind would default to swallow your ego, be creative, try something new. I wouldn't sit around and wallow in misery and say the end is nigh, it's all over, and, swallow some pill and go into a deep slumber, never to be seen again. No. There's a million other things in the world that I love doing, and I would immediately adapt myself to something else. I would move on to the next thing. I wouldn't wallow in the fact that I was a one-trick pony and now somebody just broke my legs. No, I would just move on. And that's how people survive. That's how people evolve. That's how people grow. And in fact, if anything, it would force me out of this bubble of comfort that I've been able to live with the security blanket. You're never too old to try something new. An adaptable, flexible mind is one of the most important skills a human being can develop to grow. So for that very reason that I'm not just somebody who draws, I'm not just somebody who produces and sells art to make a living, I teach, I run a channel, I do other things, I diversify my passions. And it was very often as a result of not being able to find jobs in art that forced me to explore other endeavors, like starting a dance club and learning how to be an entrepreneur, something that ended up leading to me starting an art school in the first place. It taught me that I could take care of myself, that I actually could find more stability and more value and more worth and more money, quite frankly, from working for somebody else. That I could work on something that felt I had complete ownership of and support myself and my family and my living based off of that. That's a very viable option that a lot of artists choose. It taught me that art isn't the only creative thing that artists do. Their career is also an act of creativity. That career is not a one-size-fits-all thing. Oh, you want to do well in art? Okay, you need to work at Blizzard. Everybody get in line to work at Blizzard. Everybody get in line to work at Guerrilla Games. Everybody get in line to work at Warner Brothers. No, those are just a very small, finite set of options that so many people are fighting for that only a very, very small percentage of people actually get in there. And the ones who do are the ones that are the most suited for that. But to the rest of us, we're artists. And an artist's life is a life of self-discovery. And if this artistic journey of the ages that I've taken you through has taught you anything, it's the fact that it is a journey. I know that sounds cliche, but it's true. But it's also beautiful. That your journey is of your own making. It's your story. It's your legacy. And the sooner you learn to listen to yourself and do what is true to you and pursue a career that is true to you, be realistic, be open-minded, be flexible, be smart, be brave, learn to manage your ego. All of these emotional things you need to juggle simultaneously, then you will survive and thrive as an artist through the good and the bad. Cool? That said, I love you all with all my heart. Thank you for being my partner in crime through the first half of my journey. And here's to part 2. Take care.